I'd like to call this September 13th, meeting of the Rockingham County School Board to order. First thing on the agenda, I will be running the meeting tonight as vice chair because Renee Reed is hopefully going to join us a little bit later, but she's gotten tied up in an event. So she may come in, so just be patient with us. First item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Mr. Falk. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Okay, I have a motion that's been properly made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those approved, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Great, motion passes. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now have a moment of silence. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is public comments. We have two folks signed up for public comment tonight, with the first being Zach Nicholson.
Couldn't attend the previous 3 meetings, so I got about 3 months of stuff in 3 minutes. So.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, can I take this off the speaker?
You may.
Okay.
We are not in a school.
Okay. Good evening, I'm Zach Nicholson, proud father of 3 boys, ages 9, 6, and 3, 2 of whom attend Riverbend. I'm here today to discuss some old and new business. This board's policies have been very confusing on multiple issues as of lately. 2 weeks before school started, a mass survey went out. Later, you hid behind the legal team and claimed that your hands were tied due to recent state law. Now, recently, another survey came out dealing with testing. Now, to my understanding, Virginia state law says we will follow CDC guidelines to the max extent possible. However, I want to know if, and more than likely when, the CDC recommends vaccine for in-person learning, will this board fight or cave and sell our children for $1 over risk of losing state and federal funds? Now look behind me. This crowd of parents here in meetings past can either be resources or we can be adversaries to this board. But it seems some people want to keep poking the bear. I'm telling you, the vaccine, if mandated for kids, will be a cultural flashpoint for a revolution in this country the likes no one has ever seen. I'm not calling for violence. Now listen, I'm telling you the pulse of parents right now. DC passed a law called the Minor Consent for Vaccination Amendment Act 23-19, where 11-year-olds can be vaccinated without parental consent. That's scary news from a place 2 hours from here that seems to make its way down river to us here in the valley. As of August 27th, VAERS data shows 650,000 adverse reactions, 14,000 of those life-threatening, 56,000 hospitalizations, 18,000 with permanent disabilities, and 14,000 deaths from vaccines, which is thousands more than all vaccines combined since 1990. 4.2 million kids have tested positive for COVID, and 0.008% of them have died. The 2018-19 seasonal flu killed 480 kids per CDC. That seasonal flu has killed more kids than COVID has in a year and a half. Now, did anyone in this community or board advocate for masks then? Look up Munchausen by proxy, because that's what we are doing to these kids. 18 and younger has a 99.998% recovery rate with no treatment. Bathrooms. I challenge any board member of opposite sex to join me in any high school locker room to change next to each other, and we'll shower next to each other. I'm willing to bet if you and I are uncomfortable, then so are these kids. That policy should be null and void on the grounds of not providing a safe environment. Lastly, CRT. I'm quoting artist Tom McDonald. My parents taught me to treat everyone as an equal. I won't be ashamed of my pretty blue eyes. Go be proud that you're black, but don't hate me for some credit. The white race as a whole ain't the enemy. The racist white people, but we're far from that collectively. Ivory or ebony. Martin Luther King to Kennedy. We all bleed the same, Martin Luther King to Kennedy. You're letting history perpetuate the hatred within and then paint me with the same brush you paint slave owners with. Acknowledging atrocities were wrongly committed is all I can offer when wrongly convicted. I would never judge a man for what God gave him in pigments or plot against him because he is different. Being white and being racist aren't the same, and I promise. I know it's hard to tell the difference if I'm just being honest. I deserve the chance to show you I'm not part of the problem, and you owe it to yourselves. We got so much in common. In closing, I'd rather live in a society that questions the answers than a society that has answers that can't be questioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chelsea Wine.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Chelsea Wine, and I have a student in Rockingham County Schools. I just have a few comments to present to the board this afternoon. First, I would like to give praise to Sarah Hamill at John Wayland Elementary for the new pickup and drop-off procedures. I see her along with other staff outside, unlike in previous years, and I don't feel as though I have to rubberneck in the parking lot to be sure that my child got into school safely. Though I do not agree with parents not being allowed in the schools. I've always been an active participant in my child's class, whether it be field trips or just an extra set of hands on a project. And I don't believe that there's any benefit for any child to have an absent parent. In the attempts to, quote, COVID-proof everything, the administration has forgotten what it takes to create a healthy school environment. And just to finish, the surveys given to our students about their pronouns and the LGBTQ Alliance Club are both highly inappropriate. It is never okay that teachers and students know each other's sexual preferences. There is currently a lawsuit against Rockingham for a teacher grooming and sexually assaulting a student, and I don't think it's a can of worms that needs to be opened. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the speakers we have signed up.
Excuse me, ma'am. I didn't see that list. I was standing right there at 7 o'clock. I'd like to speak if I could.
I will say that I saw you in the parking lot at 6 o'clock, and it was out when I came out.
I was out there at 7 o'clock and the list was not there for anybody to sign up and speak. I'd like to speak.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. My name is David Brakeman. I'm from Kieseltown. Many of you know me. I have a couple of things to say about your transgender policy tonight. I find it rather ironic that a previous form of this board passed a transgender policy in September of 2012, and yet as important as it seemed to have been passed largely in secret, this board has not educated its faculty or staff in one in-service session on this policy since it was implemented in 2012. From what I understand, this policy is being introduced and enforced on an individual school basis. You don't enforce policies on an individual school basis. This board needs to finally come clean and describe in detail and fully describe what your non-discrimination policy means in our classrooms, in the bathrooms of the school, in the locker rooms, and in the showers. Unfortunately, this board's reputation has been tarnished on this issue by Dan Breeden and Lowell Falk, who previously lied to the community in their one and only press conference before the election in 2013. As both taxpayers and a community member, all of us deserve honesty from our elected officials, and this board has been sadly lacking in honesty on this policy. Finally, I was in New York, but I watched the July 12th meeting on Zoom when Dr. Scheichel had mentioned that a child couldn't just pick up what gender they were going to be on any given day. And I learned a lot about what transgender people were during the 2013 election cycle, and I learned about a transgender type called gender fluid. When children exactly do that, they decide on any given morning based on how they feel what gender that they're going to be for that day. And this board needs to tell us how those children and all the other children are going to be treated in all of our facilities on school grounds. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on. And we're going to go to highlights by board members. I think I'll start with Dan Breeden.
Like to congratulate everybody on a successful opening and all of the hard work that went into that, and look forward to having as good of a school year as we can as circumstances change. But thanks to all the staff for what they've done to get us up and going.
Thank you. Dr. McQuilkin?
I would like to recognize two individuals from our school system. One is Lauren Shiflett, who was a teacher, when the teacher in the first grade at Elkton Elementary School won the State Economic Award, and she went on to win the National Economics Award for the most outstanding elementary economics educator nationally, and that's quite a recognition. She's currently a fourth grade teacher at South River Elementary. And we'd also like to recognize our superintendent, who was recognized by the FFA nationally with an honorary American FFA degree. And someone said to me the other day that this was quite a national honor, and we'd like to recognize him for that. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, and yes, congratulations to both those individuals, especially Dr. Scheichel. Mr. Folk?
I would just like to echo what Mr. Breeden said about the wonderful and successful start we've had to the school year. These have certainly been trying times, and we have excellent people in place to make sure that our children are safe and our staff is safe and that things go as well as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Reed. Do you have some highlights for us?
Actually, I don't, other than to thank the board members for allowing me the graciousness to be late this evening. One of my other duties this is probably the first time in quite some time that I've been late, and so one of my other duties that I had conflicted with this, so I appreciate you starting the meeting and getting started. As always, thank you to our speakers for sharing their thoughts and opinions with us. It's not easy to speak in front of the board, we know that, and appreciate you coming and speaking before us. This is the first time probably in about 4 or 5 meetings where we've had speakers and we've gotten through the speakers and finished. And so I greatly appreciate the respectfulness and the tenor of those comments that we got tonight. So thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lohr.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Is it me or you next?
That's your choice.
Oh, great. I will defer to Dr. Scheichel.
Thank you. My highlight really goes back to the fair and
Maybe I shouldn't.
to our students who are part of the ag production program. Again, I'll talk a little bit about innovation here in a few minutes, but one of the innovative classes that we offer is at MTC, Ag Production, and we operate a farm out in the Broadway area. And those students finally had a chance really to sell the product from that farm. And so they had a burger place that they had set up and where they were selling the burgers with beef from the farm, and made more than $10,000, I think $10,503. And it just shows that we do prepare kids for careers in all kinds of fields, and we take great pride in, what our ag community here contributes. And so that was really a highlight for me, in addition to, the usual lemonade stand and all the others, but the ag production program and what they did to show real world learning, really, that was quite impressive. Thank you. And then, of course, Dr. McQuilkin had already talked about Lauren Shiflett, so that's an incredible award for her and for the school to win.
Thank you. And I thought you were going to steal my my thunder, but not so much. I'm just happy to be here tonight. I've missed the last meeting because I was actually sick as a result of the Rockingham County Fair. And I want to send a shout out to all the nurses that are working very hard, because my family was one that they had to work hard with quarantining and working out all the details of getting testing so that kids can stay in school. And I know that's been really difficult for our schools, but I appreciate everyone working really hard to keep the kids safe. As I said, I was at the Rockingham County Fair, and we got sick, but it was totally worth it, because the students, the kids that sold their livestock projects this year made over $800,000 for their education. Record-breaking amounts for our students for their projects this year. So that was a super big highlight for me. Moving on. We need to approve the minutes for the August 23rd and August 25th meetings. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Okay, and is there any discussion? Okay, we will just go ahead and vote on approving both sets of minutes. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will move on to approve the bills. Do I have a motion to approve the bills?
I move we approve the bills as presented.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. Is there any discussion on the bills? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Awesome. We have approved the bills. We can pay our bills. We have a Challenge Parent Advisory Board that I believe Dr. Painter is going to talk with us about.
I like the rhythm tonight. Chair, Vice Chair, school board members, Dr. Scheichel, pleased to report the Challenge program is back to its pre-COVID service model. So tonight I bring you the parent representatives for each school brought to me by those Challenge teachers for your approval. As soon as I have your approval, I'll be reaching out to these representatives to see in what method they want to have these meetings, what content that they want. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer, but I think you do this every year.
Do we have any questions? Dr. Scheichel?
I do recommend approval of the Challenge Parent Advisory Board for 2021-22 as presented by Dr. Painter.
Great. We have a recommendation. Is there a motion? Thank you, Mr. Falk. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Is there any further discussion? Any questions?
I have one question, Dr. Painter, and maybe this is just guidance for Dr. Scheichel also. When the parent advisory board members come through, I think it'd be really helpful for us to asterisk those who are also faculty or teachers within the school system. So it gives us just a little bit of guidance to kind of see what, as we approve those challenge advisory for all of you. And I'm a little bit of a stickler for it, so I'll admit it. But so if we can do that, I can pretty much tell looking at the list, but if we could keep that as a tab going forward to continue to do that, I'd appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your hard work and I'm putting the committee together too.
I'm learning as we go.
Exactly.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you so much. Okay. Now we have the declaration of surplus property, one of my favorite parts of the year, with Mr. Reed.
Mrs. Lord, Dr. Scheichel, members of the board. Before you, you have a list of surplus furniture and equipment that we'd like to offer for sale. Again, this year, we're going to try the online auction model, which means we're going to have 4, 5, 6 online auctions over the next few weeks. In the memo, it does say that we're going to do every other week. We're going to try to speed that up. We're going to try to do it once a week, with the first auction going online this Thursday and closing on Sunday. Sunday the 19th will be the closing. So we're going to try to do it one a week. If we can swing it, we'll continue to do that. If not, we'll back off a little bit and make them a little bit more in between. But I would recommend that the school board do approve this list so we can sell it.
I do recommend the declaration of the list of items as surplus property for online public auction as presented by Mr. Reed.
Do we have a motion?
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Is there any discussion?
So, Mr. Reed, this is all things that we can't use anywhere.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
I'm thinking depot,
it's quality merchandise that schools have said they no longer need.
Okay.
If we have items that come in from the schools that jump out and says, hey, this is something that other schools have been asking for, then, we do offer them to the other schools first.
Okay.
So there is that opportunity.
I know that's in the past.
Yeah.
The list is pretty extensive this time. And
Yeah.
There's some good deals on some school buses.
Yeah,
Yes.
come bid. I was going to say bid early and bid often, but click the buttons.
Set a really high max bid. And if you need a school bus or an overhead projector or some old outdated maps, this is a great place to get them. It's a lot of fun, actually, and it does support the school. So thank you. You guys should definitely check it out. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
I will say it's BroadwayAuctionHouse.com.
Yes, it's BroadwayAuctionHouse.com. Thank you. Okay. Now we're going into information items, and Dr. Scheichel, I guess, has a presentation for us.
There we go. Members of the board and the public, this is going to be a brief presentation, not one of my 45-minute brief presentations, but actually brief. We just wanted to update you on some of the projects we have going on this fall for long-term innovation in Rockingham County. You know that over the last 2 years, we've talked a lot about how we can prepare students for the future when according to some, half of our students may have jobs that don't exist today. And with a world that's rapidly changing, with robotics becoming more and more prominent, with robots being able to drive vehicles, to do dental surgery, and that pace only accelerating, we have to consider how we prepare students for their future, to get away from the industrial revolution model of preparing everyone for factory work. Obviously, that's changed a lot already, but there's more to do. And so I wanted to make sure that even though COVID took a big chunk out of that desire to change things as we go along, that we don't forget about that. We've managed a global pandemic, and not always with everything on long notice. Everything was short notice from one day to the next. We have to deal with different legal requirements. Obviously, as you heard earlier, it's people disagree in the community on some of these topics. But it's also, I think, always important to understand that in all my conversations with parents, when we talk about their children, then we immediately find more common ground. What is it their children deserve in terms of an education environment? And I think that's that common ground. And it plays into a lot of these terms that we sometimes hear and only interpret one way. And so I'll talk a little bit about what we have in mind. Now, we have a little bit of a bus driver shortage. So when we talk about innovation, we are trying everything. This, didn't quite work out, but anyone who knows someone who wants to drive a bus, let us know. But again, we're trying to be innovative in terms of how we potentially structure bus driver schedules. How, again, we had the conversation 2 years ago about staggering start times to be able to do more double runs. School divisions have tried, with hourly pay. And again, there may be a place where we can employ more full-time bus drivers who may be able to play other roles during the day. We were there a while back, went away from that. So we just have to think about, making sure that shortage that's really nationwide, that we find innovative ways to address it. And so we continue to have these conversations. When we opened schools, the kids really were just amazing from day one. The environment isn't what we had 2 years ago, but it's very different from what we had a year ago. And our schools immediately went into, okay, what is something that we can control and what can't we control? Let's do the things that we definitely can control. Let's create positive climate in the schools. At TA, I was there on the first day. The band was playing outside. We have students immediately getting involved in classroom activities where we focus on their mental and behavioral health. It's not going into content right away. We need to make sure people are okay. Students eat outside. This is at Spotswood here on the top right. They just, again, at many of the schools, the students, when the weather is nice, can have lunch outside. And they still engage in all kinds of group activities and conversations and interactions. And it's one of the key pieces that we always talk about. Right? It's collaborating, it's communicating, and those are two of the key pieces. When we talk about innovation, it's not always just about technology, right? Sometimes we hear, well, innovation, it's all about computers because of the robots. It's not. Innovation is to do new things when we find that what we previously knew no longer applies. And it's also really a task that we have to complete. When we know that old preparation models that were made for a time for factory work, not that there aren't still factory jobs, and we need to prepare kids for those, but when those old industrial models no longer work, it's really our duty to find ways that work. And we always talk about how we want to do this in Rockingham, because we are not Fairfax. We always talked about we want to be the best Rockingham we can be. We don't need to bring everything that happens in Fairfax or in Albemarle or anywhere really here, but we want to learn things that would work here. We can learn from many, many places. And, Maya Angelou, when we know better, we do need to do better. And we want to return to this because for an entire year, we talked with parents, we talked with board members, we talked with every staff member, I talked to students about what is it really that characterizes Rockingham County Schools. So the R for relationships, positive relationships in our buildings. The C for community, even when we disagree, right? We have to focus on an entire community and do things that help the community. And our learning has to have purpose, purposeful learning, and then the S for scholarship. So let's do the things that have purpose, that allow students to think, that allow students to use hands-on activities, real-world activities. Like I said earlier, the ag production program, and we need to value that. And we need to value that. And that's one of the pieces that we really have to also focus on, that it's not all about sending kids to college. There's a path that involves college. There's a path that involves maybe, just some post-secondary education. And there are paths that work out of high school, but we need to make sure that we encourage all kids to follow the path that really works for them. And the skills that are going to be needed, we saw this over the last year and a half, right? Communication, collaboration, critical thinking, being creative, applying solutions from one area in another, right? And then most importantly, citizenship, right? To do this for the greater good. And we had put this in this document. So we need to return to that because that's what we are about. And so how will we change our schools to account for that? To be there, with those values in mind and with those learning goals, and to be very explicit about what does that mean to see someone being a good communicator. And so even though, again, a lot of the last year and a half was characterized by just day-to-day crisis management, we didn't forget about, this direction. As we get back to that, what do we want to do? We had talked a lot about cognitive science. So when we know better, we do better. We looked at how cognitive science indicates people learn to read. And so we implemented a program this year, division-wide at the elementary schools called Letters. It's a reading program that was tremendously successful in the pilots last year, was tremendously successful in other states as well. In Virginia, some school districts take these steps, and we said, if this is what's successful, then let's do this. So this is one of those areas where we told teachers, this isn't going to be easy. This is very intense for teachers to learn, but it's going to be worth it. And just to give you one quick example, again, the specific numbers aren't necessarily meaningful, but I want you to look at that. These are different students. And so last year, in the middle of a pandemic, at John Wayland, they implemented this program. And in a regular year, we would be doing well if students got to green all the way to that purple column F. And kids were tested in the fall, and then they tested in the spring. And if you follow the spreadsheet all the way down, again, middle of a pandemic, no one expected the type of success that we saw. All kids exceeded that. We had students with disabilities. We had an enormous number of students that went way beyond what people expected beforehand. And you know, we have employees with their own kids were in those classes, and some of them gained 2 grade levels in reading. And so when we know better, we will do better. And so this requires support, and it's pretty intense. But when we know something works, then we can go in that direction. There's a press release just recently. The American Association of School Administrators, it's a National Superintendents Association. They looked at, again, most of you were, I think all of you came to the Model Schools Conference in National Harbor, where we looked at what does future-focused education look like? How do we prepare kids for the future that they will face? And so they were looking for school districts that model some of that. And so there are 13,800 school districts in the country, and 60 are on the list of school divisions that were selected by ASA for their Learning 2025 project. And it's important to understand what the pillars are that ASA focuses on in their report about national education and what we should do. And it's also important to note that we weren't just recognized, right? So I put a picture up of Ray McNulty. He is the president of the National Best Practice Center and the National Dropout Prevention Center. And school divisions that become part of this project, they are assigned a consultant, an education consultant who can, work with school divisions on, well, once you know what your goals are and you involve your community in developing those goals, how do you get there? And so we got an email from a consultant, and he said, I will be assigned as your consultant. And then the next day, he emailed again and said, never mind, because Ray McNulty had said he would personally consult for Rockingham County because of the things in our application that he saw, particularly in the area of mental behavioral health, where we just shine, right? Where we have done things that are, he said, you don't see that in other places. And so, but that's one of the pieces, right? Whole child. We have to focus on academics. Kids have to be prepared with skills and knowledge, but they also need to be in environments that are caring, where they feel like the adults care for them and where the adults do care for them. So social emotional learning and, again, our mental and behavioral health approach. So that's one pillar. The other pillar, future-focused education. So what will the future look like for kids, and what do we need to prepare them? And then the third one, equity. And I know that's a touchy one every time we talk about it. But I want to briefly explain how these conversations went, right, with ASA. Because when we talk about equity today, everyone has this picture in mind that all we're going to talk about is one type of equity discussion that's happening, and that's equity discussion around race, right? And it's important to look at how ASA actually frames it. And he said, this isn't, the third pillar isn't anti-racism, it isn't anti-discrimination, it is anti-marginalization. No student should be marginalized in our buildings. And that's one of the goals. And it's important to remember what that means to us. So here's the model that we put in to help kids, mental behavioral health. Right? Most of these positions didn't exist 4 years ago. We invited the community to watch the Paper Tigers movie and to talk about what happens when kids face a lot of trauma and what that does to their brain. And we put this in place. But when we talk about equity, I always use that example on the top right because I agree with Mr. Nicholson, what he said earlier. It's not his fault that he's white, right? I was not allowed to visit one time when I was a little bit younger in a town near Chicago because I grew up in Austria, right? And they said, well, Hitler was Austrian. We don't want someone from that community in our community. I was born in 1966, so 21 years after World War II ended. I said, I had nothing to do with it. Right? Even today, there are Facebook posts, even here, from people who say, oh, he grew up in Austria, Hitler was Austrian. Sure, he's a Nazi offspring, right? So We do it. People get judged by where they're from. And it's not fair. It's not fair. And the softball example is one of the best examples of equity that people understand intuitively. Demographics shouldn't predict outcomes. So the fact that you're a girl shouldn't mean your parents have to leave work at 4 o'clock to watch a game while the boys play at 7 o'clock. And when we see those inequities, we have to simply commit resources. So this school board put lights on all the softball fields. That's the first game played under the lights, TA Broadway. But you know what we didn't do? We didn't ask the baseball players to apologize for playing baseball, right? That's not what we're about. And so it's really important to remember that when we talk about equity. Equity means that in a criminal justice program, we should expect girls to be in that criminal justice program. We should expect that kids who are in an ag program don't feel like they're always looked at as second-rate education programs. I went to the FFA convention 3 years ago, and I had dinner with the ag teachers, and they said, you know, Oscar, oftentimes we feel like we are the second-class educators with the way resources are available and how our programs are judged. And I said, if that happens, I need to know, because it's unacceptable that kids in the ag community feel like they are not the same as the kids that apply to UVA or to other universities. There have to be programs for all the kids. It's how I grew up. And no one thought I could go to college, much less graduate from UVA. I was always told we weren't going to achieve anything because we were poor. And if we don't see that in our poor kids, in every kid, that doesn't mean every kid needs to go to college, but every kid needs to have that opportunity. That's what equity is. And yes, there are components that deal with other demographic factors. So if race is a predictor of outcomes, we need to have that conversation. But it's also true about so many other factors. And we shouldn't just focus on that one. And one thing is for sure, I agree with you on that. We shouldn't make kids apologize for something they had absolutely no control over. I agree 100%, right? But that's not what these conversations should be, right? Because those kids also deserve to have their chance. And we make kids believe too many times that they're not good in math because they fell behind early and they never caught up. And in math, it's the most extreme where kids just think, and I know adults do too, I'm just not good at math. No such thing, right? It's a matter of mindset. And so when we have math classes that we want all kids to be successful in, there are ways to do that. It doesn't mean we teach math differently or that we don't teach difficult math. It means we need to make teachers and students work on their mindset, that they can actually accomplish it. And that translates into all the other things we do as well. And so this is why we are working with Harvard Proving Ground. Harvard saw our mental behavioral health model. And as a result of that, they said, we want to work with Rockingham. But let's find ways we can make all kids successful so that kids from poor neighborhoods aren't always, and not always, but the vast majority are ending up in lower track math classes. Upper middle class kids inevitably are in honors class. How can we make it so that all kids can be successful? The kids from the upper middle class neighborhood, as well as the kids that grow up in a poor neighborhood. That's what equity is. And so we've reached out, and so for 3 years, we're going to work with Harvard to do that. More detail to follow, but that's what this is all about. It's not about just these hot button topics, because again, we don't need to do what everyone else does, and we don't need to always do what we've always done. So we can do things differently, and it can involve the community, and it can involve those conversations, right? We have the only cybersecurity educational operations center in the country at a high school. MTC teaches for the future, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be teaching carpentry. Yeah. One of the first conversations I had when COVID hit was with Chief Holloway. Let's make sure fire and rescue, that program, can continue in person. We need our firefighters, right? So we adjusted everything to make it fit within the rules, right? We have culinary arts. There's a bistro at MTC. Again, we have the ag production program, all these things, right? So those are all innovative programs that don't exist everywhere. And many of them only exist here. And we can celebrate that, but we also need to then know what's the next step, right? And the kids are ready, right? You look at the kids, you look at the staff. they're ready to do new things. And the more we can get them to real-world learning, the better. And how that detail works out, that's going to be a conversation for this fall. You'll receive brief updates at board meetings, and we're working on a community advisory that goes beyond a parent advisory, teacher advisory, and classified advisory, and includes members of the community. I had a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce to talk about, what their role could be, and then again, we will involve families and all areas of the community to have these discussions over the next few months. And I'll update you as we move along, and I will entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Do we have any questions? No? Thank you. Board members, you have the financial review in your packet for your review, and then also the VBSA annual convention, information about that. And I think if you want to attend the convention, you should let Pam know as soon as possible. Okay. Other board member questions? We're going to start with Mr. Falk this time.
All of my questions were answered. Thank you.
Wow. Lucky you. Ms. Reed?
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Ms. Bookhoff, can I ask you a question about convention? About the convention, of the SBA convention? Sorry, my speaker's not on. Now so that is still going to be in person for right now, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. And when do you want to do when do you want us to register by? When do you want us to register by?
You can tell me whenever you'd like, and I will get you registered.
Okay, okay.
So as soon as possible.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to pass now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Breeden? Awesome. Dr. McQuilkin?
Pass.
So it comes down to me. And of course, I always have questions. My first question, for clarification for the group, Dr. Scheichel, vaccines for students and making those mandatory. Can you please discuss?
Yeah, there are some vaccines that are currently mandatory. There are exceptions to that, but that's done by the health board. I believe there was a change in the process in the past. The General Assembly would have to approve it. I think there's now a health board that can make that decision. But if vaccines, first of all, it's highly unlikely, I would say, that any vaccine under emergency use authorization would be mandated for students, but it wouldn't be something that we do. If anything, it would be added to the list of vaccines that are required. And I can't speak for that board or for the governor or for the General Assembly. We're as much a passenger on that one as anybody. And again, it's always important to remember too, that again, the list of vaccines that is mandated for school attendance also always has exceptions in it. But I don't anticipate that we would simply go out and say, hey, it's now mandatory for students in Rockingham. Again, we would that's a legislative process and the health board.
So it's not even on our jurisdiction.
I mean, school divisions can make their own decisions and to some extent, but that's, I mean, again, I'm not speaking for the board either, so, but I can't see that, especially because it is under
would be
EUA.
unprecedented.
Right. It's EUA for anyone under 16 and up. Only Pfizer is fully authorized by the FDA. But no, this board hasn't done that before, and I don't see me recommending that we make a vaccine mandatory to students unless it's on the list of mandatory vaccines, and then I don't have to do that. So I don't see that happening for the spring or next school year. But again, so that's not something on our radar at all at this point.
Thank you. And then I'm seeing some folks that look like they might be high school seniors, and maybe we're back to high schoolers, government classes encouraging students to come. Do we have any high school seniors tonight? Nope. But Did we have two, did the two just leave? Well, we are going to say great for you guys. And then I do see that we have some young people that I'm just going to assume are students unless you really want to raise your hand up or stand up and take a bow. But I would like for all of us to remember why we are here and applaud our students in the room. And I believe that is all I have.
Yeah, I do want to make one comment about the next few board meetings. Because of the mask requirement in our schools, we saw last time, right, that it's, people don't want to wear the masks, and so we ended up with a short meeting. I think this venue allows everyone to follow non-K through 12 guidance, and so please just keep your eyes open for potential location changes so we can continue to have the board meetings at a place where, again, these options are available to people for the foreseeable future. So I will announce that. Again, it's a matter of finding locations that can hold a board meeting. This particular room isn't available on those dates, so, but we will let the public know as soon as we have a different location. But I would anticipate that, again, in individual conversations with board members that we'll settle on something and then have meetings the same, under the same rules as this one.
Okay, thank you. We have reason to enter into closed session. Do I have a motion?
I move that the board enter a closed meeting to discuss and consider the following pursuant to provisions of Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711, A1, personnel-specific public officers, appointees or employees, including the division superintendent, for the purpose of considering each individual's assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, salary, or resignation.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. All those in favor, is there any discussion? All those in favor of entering into closed session, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? That motion passes. We are in closed session. Thank you all. Thank you for coming, and please drive safely home and have a safe week.